probably all heard of the 10,000-hour rule, which Malcolm Gladwell wrote about in his book Outliers. It's the idea that it takes 10,000 hours of focused practice to achieve mastery in complex skills. Today I'm going to share some groundbreaking technology that's putting that rule on its head and potentially democratizing the way we learn skills in a way we've never seen before. But first, let me go back to that 10,000-hour rule for a second. I remember hearing about that when the book first came out and thinking, I guess that makes sense for most skills, but good luck trying to achieve mastery in golf. I can say this as somebody who's well past the 10,000-hour mark in golf, and in fact, played the game at the highest level in the sport. Golf is one of the most difficult skills to learn, and quite frankly, impossible to master. How difficult? Well, for those of you who have never had the distinct pleasure of trying to learn the sport, let me share a couple quotes about golf that may give you an idea. Golf, like measles, should be caught young. Golf, a plague invented by the Calvinistic Scots as a punishment for man's sins. It's very dramatic. This is my favorite personally. The only time my prayers are never answered is on the golf course. It's 100% true. Now, why anybody would spend time playing this insane sport that makes you want to curl up into a fetal position and rock back and forth, trying to metabolize the feelings of shame and embarrassment, it's a story for another day. But for today, I have some great news. Because we're at the cusp of a learning revolution as big as the one that was sparked by the internet a few decades ago when we all of a sudden had access to unlimited information and knowledge just at our fingertips. But this time, with AI-enabled technologies, we can go beyond just passively absorbing information and put knowledge into action, thereby exponentially accelerating the process of learning difficult skills like golf. Here, let me take you on a journey of my own experiences with learning. Summer of 1991, my parents saw me swing a plastic bat for the first time. I must have looked like Barry Bonds because the following week they took me to the driving range, set me up with a coach and a set of clubs and said, "Come here and practice for 3 hours every day after school." I said, "Okay, Mom and Dad. Just one logistical question. How do I get here from school?" To which they said, "I don't know. Figure it out. There's probably a bus for it." I had just turned 8, and this was Seoul, a city of 15 million people and a dizzying array of public transportation options, including buses, to be fair. But I was never one to back down from a challenge, so figure it out I did by trial and error because, no Google Maps back then. So most of the time, I would get on the right bus and end up safely at my destination. From time to time, though, I picked the wrong ones and end up crossing rivers I wasn't supposed to and in places I'd never been to. And, I learned golf. I worked on my golf game in a similar way by a lot of trial and error. Sure, when my coach was there to give me some guidance, it was great, but 99% of the time in golf, you're on your own, whether it's play or practice. So I would hit hundreds of balls a day, and some shots were hit great, some not so good, and some so bad I swear the ball could have ended up on the other side of the city if it hadn't been for the netting. But after hitting quite literally 1 million golf balls through the thickness of the summer heat and the bitter, freezing cold of the winters that would crack open my fingertips every single year, I figured out how to make the ball go very straight. And that took me all the way to the LPGA Tour, where I competed against the best players in the world. And apparently I learned how to dress a little bit better too. About 30 years, fast forward about 30 years, I found myself embarking on a slightly different, updated learning experience when I decided to teach myself the piano. You see, I picked up a bit of a live performance bug while here at Wharton, where I sang in a student band called the Lurking Variables. True story. And we competed in the annual Wharton Tradition Battle of the Bands in 2014 and 2015. And ever since then, I've always wanted to explore this side of me a little bit further. So finally, in January of 2020, I decided to, set a New Year's resolution to perform in an open mic at a local San Francisco bar. Now, I don't know if any of you guys have looked up the requirements for an open mic performance, but I did. And I found out that you can't just go up there on your own and sing karaoke, because, it's just karaoke. I'll point you to a different kind of bar down the street. You have to play an instrument while singing. Newsflash. It was presented a bit of a challenge for me because the only instrument I knew how to play was the flute. The last time I checked, you can't sing and play the flute at the same time. And the one time I tried to learn the guitar, I ended up with tendinitis in my left hand before I could get through my first song. So that left me with one option, the piano. And learning the piano, I didn't have a coach. Oh, here's some fun pictures from Battle of the Bands. In learning the piano, I didn't have a coach like I did in golf. I had hundreds of coaches I found in a magical place called YouTube. And there were endless varieties of tutorial content available for every song I wanted to learn. So I spent many quarantine-induced hours watching YouTube tutorials and trying to follow along. My poor husband, Akshay, had to endure just genuinely awful playing and me repeating passages over and over again in our small San Francisco apartment during those lockdown months. And YouTube is a phenomenal resource for those of us trying to learn anything. There are hundreds of millions of hours of how-to content available. But it has its limitations because it's one thing to watch a person do something in a video, and a whole another thing to try to follow along, copy it, and execute that same skill. For me to learn a 10-second passage in a song, I found myself having to identify that part in the video, find the minute mark, and replay that over and over again at least 15, 20 times before I can even begin attempting to follow along. And when I did, it would sound nothing like the thing I had just watched. And I knew that I was making mistakes, but didn't really know how to fix it. It was a really frustrating process not having someone there to watch me, to provide feedback as I went along. So, the pandemic, the open mic thing never happened, but I did manage to learn over a dozen songs that I can play and sing at the same time. And as an alternative to my New Year's resolution, I posted these songs on YouTube and Instagram. As you can tell, I'm a bit of a junkie when it comes to skill acquisition. And my lifelong pursuit of learning difficult skills led me to start my company, Sportsbox AI, which has developed AI-enabled markerless 3D motion capture and analysis technology that's closing that very gap I just described between watching instructional content and executing and performing that skill, and eventually transform the way we learn anything. This is where I'm going to talk about AI, and it gets a little bit wonky, so stick with me here. AI technology has come a long way since its first commercial application in the field of voice recognition, like Siri and Alexa. A few years ago, we began seeing machine learned technology that can basically automate the tracking of body points while it's in motion. Kind of like this. Imagine Einstein walking here. What you're seeing here is machine learned computer models that can accurately pinpoint to joint centers of different body parts, like shoulders and elbows, hips, knees, and create a 2D key point system that can be mapped into an XY coordinate. That's called 2D pose estimation. Sportsbox has taken this a few steps further. At Sportsbox, we've trained our AI models to recognize and detect 40 key points on the body, more than 40 key points, in fact. Even while the body is moving at 100 plus miles per hour, like you see in a golf swing. And even when some of those body parts are completely hidden from camera view. We not only generate the 2D key points, the X and Y, but we can also figure out where the third coordinate, the Z, is for each of those 40 key points to generate a full 3D system. And from that information, we can create an avatar that moves exactly like the person in the video. And all of this is done using a single video taken from my cell phone. What can you do with this technology? Well, based on the 3D information we have on all those body points, we can now have quantifiable metrics on how every one of the body segments is moving, such as how many degrees did my shoulders and pelvis rotate? How many inches did my head move up and down or side to side? With this information, as a golfer, if I'm working on my backswing rotation, I can now know exactly within degrees whether I'm rotating too much or not enough. Immediately, right? In the moment of practice. And further, now I don't have to wonder, like the mystery of what did my swing do when I hit it perfectly down the middle versus 50 yards to the right into my neighbor's window. I can quantify the difference between those swings using inches and degrees. It's pretty powerful. With Sportsbox AI, we provide the critical feedback in the moment so that you can make a course correction. There's no time wasted just obliviously making mistakes with your repetitions, wondering what you're doing differently from that tutorial you just watched or the instruction you've received from your coach. Take this just one step further. The ability to generate 3D information in an avatar like this sets us up to do something cool, like creating a 3D hologram of your movement using just your cell phone. Do you remember Star Trek and Star Wars when the characters would appear in a hologram to send messages across the galaxy? Well, we're basically in that future now, except we don't even need R2-D2 anymore. Sorry, R2. You can use the same cameras that are built into your mobile phones or computers and allow, let's say, a coach or a physical therapist to walk around you, a 3D hologram of you doing certain exercises, and provide real-time feedback based on accurate 3D information so that you know that you're making the right moves or making progress with your range of motion. Imagine a world in which this type of real-time feedback based on 3D visualization and data is available for anything. Think about how many times you walk by somebody at the gym looking at an app and doing a basic squat like this. And how many hours of your quarantine life did you waste trying to learn TikTok dances? If a set of eyes were there to provide some real-time feedback and coaching, How much faster could Jimmy have learned that dance? And take it a little bit further. Imagine a world in which we use this technology for any skill you want to learn, not just in sports and fitness, but in any skill that requires movement proficiency. Think about complicated surgical skills in which the difference, just a fraction of an inch difference in the way your fingers move, can mean the difference between life and death. Now, as we collectively imagine the possibilities, I want to share some more skills I'd like to learn in the next, in my 40s. I've always wanted to be a drummer so that I can have a one-man band, one-person band. I've always wanted to be a tennis player so that I can look cool like Naomi Osaka serving the ball. And this one is my holy grail. I'm sharing something very personal with you all. I'd like to be able to perform every choreographed dance to Justin Timberlake's 2006 album so that I can audition to be his backup dancer. And so much more, right? And I'll leave you with this thought. What would you attempt to do if you weren't faced with the 10,000 hours of lonely and frustrating repetitions? What's on your list? Thank you.